They say desperation makes you knock on doors you never imagined opening. That night, the email hit my inbox like a punch. Failed midterm, scholarship hanging by a thread. My hands shook as I stared at the screen in my dim dorm room, the campus outside silent under a blanket of fog. Heart pounding against my ribs, I grabbed my coat and headed to the humanities building. The halls echoed with my footsteps, empty except for the hum of fluorescent lights. I stopped at her office door. Professor Olivia Reyes, my TA and tutor. The power she held over my future made the air feel thick. I raised my fist and knocked, the sound too loud in the quiet. When she opened it, her sharp eyes met mine, and everything inside me twisted. What was I doing here? The door creaked open wider, and there she stood, framed in the warm glow of her desk lamp. Olivia was everything I wasn't. Poised, mid-20s, a PhD candidate with a stack of books behind her like silent sentinels. Her dark hair was pulled back in a loose knot, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She wore a simple white blouse, sleeves rolled to her elbows, and I caught the faint scent of lavender drifting from her, mixing with the musty smell of old paper. Her eyes, dark and assessing, locked onto mine without a flicker of surprise. "It's late," she said, her voice even, like she'd been expecting this kind of interruption. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I know, but I need to talk about the midterm." She stepped aside, gesturing me in with a tilt of her head. The office was small, cluttered with notes and a half-empty coffee mug on the desk. I hovered near the door, my backpack slung heavy over one shoulder, feeling every inch the undergrad intruder. Olivia leaned against her desk, arms crossed, waiting. That's when I let it spill out. The late nights, cramming in the library, the job at the campus cafe eating into my study time, the scholarship from my small-town family back home that was my only shot at getting out. "If I fail this class, it's over," I said, my voice cracking. "My parents, they sold the farm equipment to pay for this. I can't go back a failure." The words hung there, raw, and I felt exposed, like she'd peeled back my skin. Olivia's expression didn't change much, but her eyes softened just a fraction. She uncrossed her arms, picking up my exam paper from the desk. The red ink slashed across it like wounds. "You knew the material," she said quietly, flipping through the pages. "But the pressure, it shows here. Rushed answers, second guessing." She set it down and looked at me again. Really looked, her gaze steady. I shifted under it, aware of the space between us, the way the room felt smaller. "I'm not supposed to discuss grades like this, especially not after hours. It's against policy." Her reluctance was clear, but there was something else, a curiosity, maybe, in the way her fingers tapped lightly on the desk. Like she was weighing more than just my score. I stepped closer, desperate. "Please, is there extra credit? Anything?" My hands clenched at my sides, the cool air from the window brushing my neck. She straightened, her posture impeccable, but her eyes lingered on my face a second too long. "Begging won't change the rubric," she said, though her tone lacked bite. Instead, it carried a low warmth, almost inviting confession. I felt a flush creep up my neck, the power imbalance hitting hard. She could end my semester with a word, and here I was, pleading in her space. The quiet campus outside pressed in, distant footsteps fading down the hall. She glanced at the clock, then back at me. "This isn't the place. Not now." Her voice dropped, deliberate. I nodded, deflated, turning to leave, but as I reached the door, she spoke again. "Tomorrow. Library. After hours. We can talk then. Privately." The word hung, loaded. I met her eyes, seeing that hint of curiosity deepen into something unspoken. She closed the door behind me with a soft click, leaving me in the empty hall, heart still racing. The fog outside had thickened, mirroring the knot in my chest. What had just happened? I walked back to my dorm, the cold air biting, replaying her gaze. It wasn't mercy she offered. It felt like an invitation to something riskier. The library after hours felt like a secret world, all shadows and hushed echoes. I arrived early, my backpack thumping against my back as I navigated the stacks to the corner Olivia had specified. The air was cool, laced with the scent of aged books and polished wood. A single lamp glowed on the table, casting long fingers of light across the worn oak surface. I sat, pulling out my notebook, but my mind raced ahead, replaying last night's knock, her steady gaze. The clock ticked past 8, and then she appeared, moving quietly through the aisles like she belonged to the night. Olivia set her bag down with a soft thud, her coat draped over one arm. She wore a dark sweater tonight, the fabric hugging her frame, and her hair fell loose, brushing her shoulders. "You came," she said, settling across from me. No smile, just that assessing look, her eyes catching the lamplight. I nodded, my throat tight. I had to. We started with the midterm, her voice low as she spread my paper between us. But it wasn't just review. Her questions dug deeper, probing why the answers faltered. "Tell me about the pressure," she said, leaning forward, elbows on the table. Her fingers splayed near mine, close enough to feel the warmth. I hesitated, staring at the ink marks. Then it poured out. The family back in the small town, the weight of their sacrifices. My parents scraping by on the farm, selling off land to fund my tuition. "They think this is my way out," I whispered, my voice barely carrying. "If I fail, I go back to waiting tables at the diner, marrying the boy next door because that's what's expected. No choices, no future." The words tasted bitter, vulnerability cracking open in the dim light. Olivia listened, her face still, but her eyes held mine, unblinking. The library's silence amplified everything, the faint creak of the building settling, my uneven breaths. She reached for a pencil, marking a margin, but her hand brushed mine instead. Accidental, maybe, her skin cool against my knuckles. I froze, an electric current shooting up my arm, pausing time. She didn't pull away immediately. Her touch lingered, light like testing water. "I know that weight," she said finally, withdrawing slowly. Her voice dropped, confiding. "My family pushed me into academia too. First gen, the pride of the village. But up here it's isolating. No one asks about the person behind the grades." Shared loneliness hung between us, a thread pulling taut. I saw it in her then, the faint lines around her eyes, the way she gripped the pencil tighter. Not just the tutor, but a woman carrying her own hidden burdens. We talked longer than planned, the session shifting from equations to confessions. Her questions revealed cracks in her armor. Late nights grading alone. The PhD program's relentless grind. The ache of being seen only as competent. "Sometimes I wonder if anyone's left who sees more," she murmured, her gaze drifting to the window, where fog pressed against the glass. I nodded, my chest tight with recognition. The air thickened, charged, our knees nearly touching under the table. When she finally circled back to the grade, her tone turned practical, but her eyes lingered on my lips, then my hands. "An extension could help," she said. "Extra work, private sessions. But it comes with conditions. Commitment. No distractions." The word private echoed, her stare holding promise and warning. I felt the pull, deeper than academics, a forbidden current stirring in the quiet corner. Those private sessions became my lifeline, threading through the weeks like a secret rhythm. We met in her office after the labs emptied, the campus settling into dusk's hush. The first one started simple enough. Equations sprawled across the desk, her voice guiding me through the knots in my notes. But proximity did its work. Olivia sat closer than necessary, her chair angled toward mine, the heat from her arm radiating across the narrow space. I could feel the faint brush of her sweater against my sleeve as she pointed to a formula, her breath steady and warm near my ear. "Here," she said, low, like sharing a confidence. "See how it balances? You push too hard sometimes, force the solution." Her words landed soft, but they stirred something deeper, a pull I tried to ignore. Nights blurred into routine. I'd arrive with coffee, black for her, and she'd take it with a nod, her fingers grazing mine over the cup. The office lamp cast shadows that danced across her face, highlighting the curve of her jaw, the way her lips parted slightly when she concentrated. I started noticing the details she'd hidden before. The silver ring on her thumb, worn smooth from habit. The stack of poetry books tucked behind the textbooks, spines creased like old friends. The faint scar on her wrist, pale against her skin, from some untold story. These glimpses cracked her professional shell, revealing desires she kept locked away. One evening, as rain pattered against the window, she paused mid-explanation, her eyes flicking to mine. "You watch me when you think I'm not looking," she murmured, not accusing, but curious. My cheeks burned, but I didn't deny it. The air thickened, charged with what we weren't saying. The sensory buildup was relentless. Her voice dropped lower in those late hours, wrapping around concepts like velvet, smooth, insistent. We'd lean over the same page, arms brushing as she traced lines with her pen, the contact lingering a beat too long. Once, her knee pressed against mine under the desk. Accidental at first, then unmoving. I felt the firmness of her leg through the fabric, a steady anchor that made my pulse stutter. The scent of her lavender sharpened in the close air, mixing with the sharp tang of ink and my own nervous sweat. I caught myself staring at her hands, long fingers, nails short and practical, imagining them elsewhere. Hidden desires surfaced in fragments, her laugh, rare and throaty, when I finally grasped a theorem. The way she'd tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, exposing the soft line of her neck. It was torture, this dance around the edge, the power she held making every touch feel forbidden. Then came the sultry comment that tipped the scale. We were deep into a problem set, the clock pushing midnight, my frustration mounting. I slammed my pencil down, rubbing my temples. "I can't focus like this," I muttered, the pressure coiling tight in my chest. Olivia leaned back, her gaze unflinching, a slow smile curving her lips. "Focus under pressure," she said, her voice like smoke. "That's when it gets interesting. When you lean in, let the tension build until it breaks." Her eyes held mine, dark and knowing, the words laced with double meaning. Heat flooded me, pooling low, and I knew she felt it too. The unspoken hunger in the room, the way our breaths synced. She didn't look away, and neither did I, the moment stretching taut. That night marked the first intentional linger. As the session wrapped, I gathered my things, but she stood with me, closer than before. Her hand rested on the desk edge, inches from mine. "You're improving," she said softly, her fingers shifting to brush my knuckles, deliberate, electric. Time slowed, her touch sending sparks up my arm. I met her eyes, seeing the desire mirrored there, raw and unguarded. Neither of us moved, the rain outside drumming an urgent beat. Finally, she withdrew, but the promise hung heavy. I left with my skin humming, the extension feeling less like salvation and more like a doorway to something dangerous, something I craved. The sessions didn't stay confined to desks and deadlines. One afternoon, after unraveling a particularly stubborn proof, Olivia glanced at the clock and suggested we step out for coffee. "You need a break," she said, her voice carrying that low certainty, like she knew my edges before I did. The campus cafe hummed with distant chatter, but we claimed a corner table by the window, steam rising from our cups like unspoken thoughts. Black for her, with a splash of cream for me, she remembered without asking. We talked about the material at first, but the words veered. I mentioned the farm letters from home, the way my mother's handwriting trembled on the page, full of pride and quiet worry. Olivia listened, her fingers circling the mug's rim, eyes fixed on mine. Then she shared her own fragments. Growing up in a tight-knit immigrant family, the first to chase degrees this far north, the holidays spent alone in her apartment while siblings gathered south. "They call, ask if I'm eating right," she said, a faint smile tugging her lips. "But they don't see the hours that swallow you whole." Her vulnerability cracked open, raw in the cafe's warm light, and I felt the ache mirror mine, pulling us closer across the scarred wood table. Those coffee breaks wove into our rhythm, short escapes that stretched longer each time. Back in the office, the physical intimacy crept in, subtle at first. She'd lean over my shoulder to correct a diagram, her fingers tracing the lines on the page, slow and deliberate, the warmth of her hand seeping through the paper to my skin. One evening, as fog rolled in early, our knees pressed under the desk again, unmoving this time. A steady contact that sent heat coiling up my thigh. I didn't shift away. Neither did she. The shared warmth built like a current, her sweater brushing my arm as she explained vectors, her breath grazing my cheek. "Feel that pull?" she murmured, her voice husky, pointing to the graph but meaning more. My pulse thudded, the room shrinking around us, scented with her lavender and the faint bitterness of cooling coffee. I nodded, throat dry, the touch of her fingers lingering on the page like a promise. But the internal conflict gnawed at me, sharp in the quiet moments. Walking back to my dorm, I'd replay the brushes, the shared glances, fear twisting in my gut. She was my tutor, the line between us etched in university policy, a chasm of power and ethics. Crossing it could shatter my scholarship, her career, everything we'd built on desperation. Yet the growing ache pulsed deeper, a hollow want that kept me awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining her hands not on paper but on me. Was it the isolation drawing us, or something truer? I caught myself seeking her out, lingering after sessions, the pull magnetic despite the risk. Olivia seemed to fight it too, her touches withdrawing abruptly sometimes, her eyes clouding with hesitation. But then she'd lean in again, like gravity won. Her confession came on a crisp evening, the office lit by a single lamp, shadows pooling in the corners. We'd finished early, the air heavy with unsaid things. She set her pen down, rubbing her temples, the lines of exhaustion etching her face. "This world," she said quietly, gaze drifting to the window. "It's a machine. Grades, publications, tenure tracks. You pour yourself in, and what's left is echoes." Her voice cracked, just once, revealing the isolation she'd hinted at before. The late nights alone, relationships frayed by ambition. The PhD, a lonely climb. "I came here thinking it'd be enough," she added, meeting my eyes, raw. "But it's not. Not without someone who sees the rest." The words hung, her hand inches from mine, the warmth bridging the gap. I felt it then, the shared ache binding us, deeper than academics, a quiet hunger for connection in the grind. Rain started that night, sudden and relentless, drumming the roof as we packed up. The campus paths would be slick, flooded. Olivia hesitated at the door, coat in hand, water already streaking the glass. "My place is closer," she said, voice low over the downpour. "Dry clothes, better coffee. We can finish the chapter there." Her eyes held mine, invitation laced with caution, the rain blurring the world outside. I nodded, heart thudding, stepping into the storm with her, the line blurring further in the wet dark. The drive to her apartment blurred through sheets of rain, wipers slashing rhythmically across the windshield. Olivia gripped the wheel, her knuckles pale, the silence between us thick with the storm's roar. We pulled into a narrow lot behind a brick building off campus, the kind tucked away from the main drags, ivy climbing the walls like it wanted to hide the place. She led me up a flight of external stairs, rain soaking our coats, dripping from our hair. Unlocking the door, she flicked on a light and the space unfolded. Soft amber glow from floor lamps spilling over mismatched furniture, books stacked on every surface. Shelves groaned under volumes of philosophy and novels, dog-eared paperbacks mingling with leather-bound classics. A worn couch faced a window streaked with water, the city lights smudged beyond. It smelled of aged wood and faint vanilla, her presence woven into the air. I stood dripping in the entry, shoes leaving wet prints on the rug. Olivia shrugged off her coat, hanging it by the door, her sweater clinging slightly to her shoulders from the damp. "Towels are in the bathroom," she said, pointing down the hall, her voice steady but edged with something new. I nodded, peeling off my layers, the chill raising goosebumps on my arms. When I returned, she'd poured 2 glasses of red wine from a bottle on the counter, the liquid dark and swirling. "To surviving the storm," she murmured, handing me one, her fingers brushing mine again. Deliberate this time, warm against the cold. We settled on the couch, the chapter open on the coffee table between us, but neither reached for it. The rain hammered the roof, isolating us, the world outside reduced to gray streaks. Talk turned personal, wine loosening the edges. She asked about the farm, the dust-choked summers I'd left behind, and I described the endless fields, the weight of expectations pressing like summer heat. Olivia leaned forward, glass in hand, her knee touching mine as she shifted. Accidental at first, then not. Her leg stayed there, firm through her jeans, sending a jolt through me. I didn't pull away. The closeness built slow, her arm draping the couch back, fingers inches from my shoulder. Wine warmed my chest, her gaze tracing my face as I spoke, dark eyes reflecting the lamp's glow. "You carry it all so quietly," she said, voice low, sultry in the quiet. "That strength, it's intoxicating." The word hung, her breath close, the scent of wine mingling with her lavender. Tension peaked when she set her glass down, leaning in to point at a note on the table, her body angling toward mine. Our thighs pressed fully now, heat seeping through fabric, her hand grazing my arm as she traced the page. I turned, faces inches apart, the air electric. Her eyes dropped to my lips, then back up, a question in them. I felt the pull, magnetic, inevitable. She closed the gap, her mouth meeting mine slow, certain. Soft at first, tasting of wine and need, her lips parting gently. My hand found her waist, fingers clutching the sweater's edge, the kiss deepening as she tilted her head, a quiet sigh escaping her. It was hunger held back too long, her free hand cupping my neck, thumb stroking my jaw, pulling me closer. Time dissolved, the rain fading to a distant pulse. Just her warmth, her taste, the way her body leaned into mine. When we broke apart, breaths ragged, her forehead rested against mine, hands trembling where they framed my face. Mine shook too, trailing down her arm, feeling the rapid beat under her skin. No words at first, just the unspoken promises in her gaze, the risk we'd crossed, the want we'd admitted. She traced my lower lip with her thumb, eyes searching. "This changes things," she whispered, voice husky, laced with certainty and fear. I nodded, heart thudding, the wine glass forgotten on the table. We lingered there, bodies close, the books around us silent witnesses. Morning came gray, rain easing to drizzle. I woke on the couch, her blanket draped over me, the space beside empty but warm. Guilt hit like cold water, policy violations, her career on the line, my scholarship teetering. What had we done? I dressed quietly, slipping out before she stirred, the walk back to dorm soaking me again. But the pull strengthened, her taste lingering on my lips, the memory of her touch a constant ache. Texts waited on my phone, simple, her voice in them. "Come back tonight." I knew I would, the forbidden thread binding tighter. We tried to pull back, to rebuild the walls we'd cracked. The next session, I arrived early to her office, the door ajar, sunlight slanting through the blinds in sharp lines. Olivia sat at her desk, papers stacked neat, her posture rigid like armor. She glanced up as I entered, her eyes meeting mine briefly before dropping to the notes. "Let's focus," she said, voice clipped, pushing a textbook toward me. No coffee this time, no lingering touches. I nodded, sliding into the chair opposite, the space between us feeling vast despite the small room. We dove into the material, derivatives, integrals, her explanations precise, my responses mechanical. But the air hummed with memory, her scent faint but insistent, pulling at the edges of my concentration. It didn't last. Halfway through a problem, her pen hovered near mine on the page, and our fingers brushed. She froze, then withdrew sharply, but not before I felt the tremor in her hand. I looked up, catching the flush creeping up her neck. "Sorry," she muttered, but her gaze lingered, dark and conflicted. We pressed on, but stolen moments slipped in like cracks in concrete. Once, as I struggled with an equation, she leaned over my shoulder, her breath warm against my ear. "Breathe through it," she whispered, her voice sultry, low like velvet dragged over skin. Her body hovered close, hip grazing my side, the heat seeping through our clothes. I turned slightly, our faces inches apart, and for a beat, her lips parted as if to close the gap. Then she straightened, clearing her throat, but the whisper echoed, stirring the ache low in my belly. These lapses built, each one a try that failed. We'd start professional, doors open, chairs apart, but gravity pulled us in. During reviews, her body leaned toward mine over the desk, shoulders brushing, knees knocking under the wood. Sultry whispers came unbidden. "You solve it like you fight. Fierce, unyielding," she'd say, her tone laced with heat, eyes tracing my jaw. I'd respond in kind, my hand finding hers briefly on the page, thumb stroking her knuckle before we jerked apart. The office felt smaller each time, the fluorescent hum mocking our restraint, her lavender scent thickening the air until it pressed against my skin. But guilt clawed at me afterward, walking the empty paths, the campus lamps casting long shadows. This wasn't just risk, it was ruin. Her PhD, my future, all teetering on these stolen seconds. External pressure mounted like storm clouds. Whispers started in the halls, classmates eyeing me during lectures, a friend pulling me aside one afternoon in the quad. "People are talking. You and Reyes? Late nights?" Her words landed heavy, the scholarship deadline looming in red on my calendar just weeks away. My parents called that evening, voices tinny over the line, asking about grades, the farm's dry spell mirroring my own drought. "Don't let us down," my mother said, and I hung up with the weight settling deeper, Olivia's face flashing in my mind. Rumors spread fast on a campus this size, small-town echoes amplifying them. Judgment from profs, ethics boards sniffing around. I saw it in Olivia, too, the way she'd check the door more often, her hesitation growing, ethics gnawing at her resolve. She pushed back one night, after a session where our hands had tangled too long over a diagram. I felt bold, the tension coiling tight, and leaned in, my lips brushing her ear. "This isn't just studying," I murmured, my fingers tracing her wrist. She pulled away, chair scraping back, her eyes flashing. "Stop. We can't." Her voice cracked, frustration etching lines around her mouth. I stood, heart pounding, the room spinning with unsaid wants. Why fight it? It's real. But she shook her head, standing too, close enough to feel her breath. "Because I'm the one who fails you if it goes wrong. The power, it's not equal. Ethics, policy, everything I've built." Her words stung, but I pushed, stepping nearer, my hand on her arm. "Then teach me that too. Don't hide." The air crackled, her body tensing under my touch, desire warring with fear in her gaze. The argument heated, voices low but sharp, her hands gesturing, mine clenching at my sides. "You don't get it," she said, voice rising just a fraction. "One complaint, and I'm done. Expelled from the program. Years wasted." I fired back, the boldness surging. "And I lose everything if I walk away now. But this, us, it's worth the fight." She paced, then stopped, facing me, inches apart, the silence heavy. Her hand lifted, hovering near my cheek, then dropped. "We need boundaries," she whispered, but her eyes betrayed her, pulling me in despite the words. The confrontation hung unresolved, the door clicking shut behind me as I left, the campus dark and pressing, our fail cycle tightening like a noose. The whispers turned to stares the next day, heavy as the fog that clung to campus. I felt them in the lecture hall, classmates glancing my way during the prof's drone on ethics in academia. One caught my eye, a TA from Olivia's program, Sarah, her face tight as she packed her bag. She didn't speak, but the look said enough. Judgment, curiosity laced with warning. Later, in the quad, she cornered me near the fountain, water splashing cold against my legs. "Saw you leaving her office last night. Late." Her voice was low, edged. People talk. Be careful. My stomach dropped, the air turning thick, the threat real now. Colleagues spotting us, rumors threading through departments like veins. I mumbled something about studying, but she shook her head, walking off into the mist. The discovery loomed, not if, but when, and it hit me. We'd been seen, the fragile secret cracking open. Olivia texted that afternoon, short and urgent. Office, now. I went, heart thudding against my ribs, the building's halls echoing emptier than before. She paced when I entered, door clicking shut behind me, her sweater rumpled, hair escaping its knot. Sarah saw us, she said, voice sharp, stopping to face me. She cornered me in the lounge, asking questions. If it reaches the chair... Her words trailed, fear etching her face, eyes wide with the ruin staring back. Career gone, PhD revoked, years of nights and grants dissolving like fog. I stepped closer, the room shrinking, her lavender scent sharp now, mixed with tension. We can deny it, I said, but she laughed, bitter, short. Deny what? The way we look at each other? It's written all over us. Her hands clenched, knuckles white, the power she'd held over me flipping, now a chain around her too. The clash built fast, emotions spilling like overturned ink. She turned away, back to the desk, gripping the edge. This ends, now, before it destroys everything. Her voice cracked, fear raw, the isolation she'd confessed crashing back, first-gen dreams crumbling under scandal. I felt the plea rise, hot in my throat. You think I don't know ruin? My scholarship's on the line, family waiting to pull me back to nothing. But this, us, it's the first real thing I've had. I moved nearer, her shoulders tense under my gaze, the air humming with our breaths. She spun, eyes flashing. Real? It's unethical. I'm your tutor. The imbalance, I could lose it all, and you'd still graduate, walk away. Pain twisted her words, but I saw the ache beneath, the vulnerability she'd hidden. Walk away? From you? My voice broke, stepping into her space, close enough to feel her heat. I'd fight for this. For us. She froze. Then her arms wrapped around me, embrace sudden, fierce, her body pressing against mine, hands clutching my back like anchor. I held her tight, face buried in her neck, the scent of her skin grounding me amid the storm. Tears wet my shoulder, hers or mine, mixing warm and salt. The hug shifted, slow, her head lifting, lips finding mine in a deep kiss, desperate at first, then certain, her mouth parting, tongue tracing mine with need. I responded, hands sliding to her waist, pulling her closer, the kiss deepening, bodies aligning, her sigh muffled against me. It was reconciliation in motion, vulnerability pouring out, her fear of loss, my plea for more, tears streaking our cheeks as we broke apart, foreheads touching, breaths ragged. I can't lose you either, she whispered, voice husky, thumb wiping my face. But the risk, we stood there, entangled, the revelation sinking in, mutual cracks, shared fears binding tighter than desire. Her career, my future, both teetering, but the ache between us deeper, undeniable. We fight, I said, voice steady now, her hand in mine, fingers lacing. Not just for the grade, for this. She nodded, eyes searching mine, the decision forming in the quiet. Extension beyond papers, a stand against the closing walls. The campus bell tolled outside, marking time we no longer feared alone. The meeting room smelled of stale coffee and polished oak, the kind of space that swallowed sound. Olivia had pulled strings for this. A closed-door session with the department head, Professor Harlan, a man whose glasses perched like judgment on his nose. I sat beside her at the long table, my hands clasped in my lap to hide the tremble, the air conditioner humming cold against my skin. She'd dressed sharp that morning, dark slacks and a crisp shirt, her hair pinned back, but I saw the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers drummed lightly on her thigh under the table, brushing mine once, grounding. Harlan entered, papers in hand, his gaze flicking between us. "This is about the extension request?" he asked, settling at the head. Olivia nodded, voice steady as she laid it out. My progress in sessions, the external pressures I'd faced, how targeted work could salvage the semester. She advocated fierce, detailing my late-night breakthroughs, the way I'd grasped concepts under her guidance. "She's committed," she said, eyes meeting his, then sliding to mine, a flicker of heat beneath the professional mask. More than most. I stayed quiet, internal resolve hardening like frost on the window. This wasn't just grades, it was everything. Scholarship intact, family pride spared, the path forward clear. But the weight clawed at me, sensory overload building. The tick of the wall clock, Harlan's pen scratching notes, Olivia's knee pressed firm against mine under the table, a secret anchor amid the scrutiny. Sweat beaded at my neck, the room's fluorescent lights buzzing like doubt in my head. What if he saw through us? The rumors Sarah had started, the late nights whispered about, one wrong look and it unraveled. Olivia's hand shifted, her pinky hooking mine briefly, warm and sure, pulling me back. Her sultry whisper from last night echoed, "We'll face it together, feel every edge." It steadied me, the resolve coiling tight, ready to fight if words failed. Harlan leaned back, glasses glinting. "The policy's strict. Extensions aren't handed out lightly." He paused, scanning my transcript, the red marks glaring. Olivia leaned forward, her voice dropping low, persuasive. "But exceptions build futures. Deny this, and you lose talent." The air thickened, her words wrapping around the room like smoke, her foot nudging mine, subtle, intimate, a reminder of stakes beyond paper. Harlan sighed, rubbing his chin, the weight stretching eternal, my pulse thudding in my ears, the chair's wood digging into my back. Finally, he nodded. "Approved. 2 weeks, rigorous makeup. No more slips." Relief crashed through me, but it weighed heavy, the personal cost lingering in his glance, the unspoken warning about boundaries. Olivia's eyes met mine, triumph mixed with shadow, her hand squeezing my knee under the table, heat blooming there. We left the building together, the campus air sharp with fall chill, leaves crunching underfoot. Success tasted bittersweet. The extension won, but the line we'd crossed etched deeper. In her car, parked in the lot's edge, the intimate aftermath unfolded. She turned to me, hands finding mine across the console, fingers lacing tight. "We did it," she whispered, pulling me closer over the gear shift, her lips brushing my knuckles, soft and affirming. I leaned in, our mouths meeting in a quiet kiss, slow, certain, her tongue tracing my lower lip with a sultry edge, tasting of mint and victory. Her free hand cupped my neck, thumb stroking the pulse there, body straining against the space between seats. "You're stronger than you know," she murmured against my skin, voice husky, her breath warm on my collarbone. I kissed her deeper, hands tangling in her hair, releasing the pin, strands falling soft. Affirmations spilled in touches, her palm flat on my chest, feeling my heart, mine tracing her jaw. "This is us," I said, pulling back just enough to see her eyes, dark and open. Worth the wait. But reflection hit as we drove back. The dynamic shifted, future uncertain. Her apartment loomed ahead, a haven and hazard. The extension buying time but not erasing risks. Ethics boards, family calls echoing small-town norms. I watched her profile, the way her hands gripped the wheel, resolve mingling with doubt. We'd won this round, but the pull between us tugged harder, promising more storms. The road curved, fog lifting slightly, mirroring the clarity we'd grasped, and the shadows still to face. The weeks after the meeting blurred into something softer, our rhythm shifting from frantic sessions to stolen hours that felt like breathing. We started with walks along the campus edges, where paths wound through thinning trees, leaves crunching underfoot like brittle secrets. Olivia's hand would find mine as dusk fell, fingers lacing tight, her thumb tracing my knuckles in slow circles. We'd talk then, voices low against the wind, her sharing dreams of fieldwork abroad, the villages she'd left echoing her family's calls. Me admitting the farm's pull, the way dust still clung to my skin in nightmares. One evening, under a street lamp's glow, she stopped, pulling me close, her lips brushing my neck in a kiss that lingered, warm and deliberate. "You taste like possibility," she murmured, her breath hot against my pulse, body pressing into mine, the quiet amplifying every shift. I shivered, hands sliding up her back, holding her there as the world faded. Those physical moments wove deeper, quiet anchors in the grind. In her apartment, after rain-slick evenings, we'd collapse on the couch, bodies aligned, her head on my shoulder. Her fingers would trail my arm, then up to my jaw, turning my face to hers for a kiss. Slow at first, lips parting with a soft sigh, her tongue teasing mine until heat built low. She'd shift, straddling my lap gently, hands framing my face, bodies pressed close enough to feel heartbeats sync. Neck kisses followed, her mouth tracing the curve, teeth grazing lightly, drawing a gasp from me. "This is what I choose," she'd whisper, voice sultry, husky with want, her hips settling against mine in the dim light. No rush, just the press of her warmth, the way her sweater rode up, skin meeting skin in fleeting touches that left me aching, resolved. But the outside pressed in, relentless. Family calls came weekly, my mother's voice tinny through the phone, laced with small-town edges. Neighbors asking about my city friends, the scholarship whispers turning to judgment if I slipped. "Don't forget where you come from," she'd say, and I'd hang up, the echoes of diner gossip, church stairs, weighing heavy. Olivia felt it too, her program's murmurs growing. Sarah's sidelong glances in halls, a colleague's pointed email about professional conduct. We'd face it tangled in sheets, her body curled around mine, hands splayed on my stomach. "They don't see us," she'd assure, lips at my ear, sultry certainty threading her words. "This risk? It's mine to take. For you." Her kiss would seal it, deep and affirming, chasing shadows with heat. Yet the pull tightened with the deadline. Notes piled up, my revisions frantic under her guidance, her hand steady on my shoulder during late reviews. The final test loomed. Everything, grades, us, balanced on that edge. The apartment's quiet humming, with stakes unspoken. The test ended with ink drying on the page, my answers solid, the proctor's nod a quiet victory. Passing secured, love etched deeper in stolen glances across the room. If you've ever felt this forbidden pull, the ache of wanting despite the world, share your story below. Subscribe for more tales of hidden desires that reshape everything.